In this segment, I want to talk about where you can find lead materials, and it's not just lead-based paint. I'd mentioned in a previous segment that you can see lead-based paint inside and outside, but nearly every time it's going to be outside because that's where the paint is in worse condition, and you can actually get access to the paint that might be 20 or 30 or 50 years old. So, but there's others. You can actually have lead in lead pipes. You can have lead in lead pipe solder. And then, of course, you've got the lead-based paint. You can also have lead in drinking water. And those of us that are as old as I am remember back when there was leaded gasoline. You can't get that anymore, at least not in the United States. Most of the world, that stuff has been banned. So, as relates to the lead pipes in the house, the idea is that water might be not a lead problem coming from the city, and then it comes into the house, and maybe you have an older home that has lead pipes. When that is the case, you can actually scour some of that lead from the pipe and have that get into the drinking water where you ingest it that way. In many cases, those lead pipes are at least 50 years old, and if there is scouring going on, those pipes have probably ruptured by now and should have been replaced by now. As the home inspector, I will rarely see lead plumbing. But if you see something and you suspect it, maybe you don't know whether it's lead plumbing or galvanized, one way to find that out is to actually scrape it with a screwdriver, and if it comes up shiny, that's lead. Similarly, if you put a magnet on it, a magnet does not adhere to lead plumbing, so that's another way to do it. But for me, I prefer to do the shiny and the scratch test, and honestly, it just doesn't happen very much. What is a lot more common is the lead solder. In many cases, you'll see maybe copper plumbing where they used a lead-based solder to attach pipe A to pipe B, and in that particular case, that was banned as recently as 1986. So that is a lot more possible. For lead plumbing, I will see that only in homes that are extremely old, maybe the early 1900s. But as far as the solder goes, yeah, we're talking about it could be a 1980s type home. Now, something to be aware of is that since about the 1990s, EPA required water systems. See, there's two things that can happen with water. It can either scour or it can deposit. So two ways for a pipe to die. One is actually for it to dissolve away and then start leaking and need to be replaced, and that's what's called a catastrophic failure. Or you can have a whimpering failure, which is basically the pipe's not getting scoured, but you're having dirt and calcium and water hardness and whatever actually deposit on the inner lining of that pipe, and it gives people a little bit more time to do the fix when they can do it, rather than wake up on Thanksgiving Day morning and find out their basement is full of water. Corrosion is the scouring, and then deposition is the coating. So EPA required that city water systems make their water chemistry so that it coats rather than scours the interior of the plumbing lines. So as a result, by now it's been decades, and lead-based solder is much less of a problem now because the interior of those pipes has been coated, so that if there is any lead solder there, it's generally not accessible to the water to be removed. Lead-based paint, again, I've mentioned you can have it on the exterior or interior. On the exterior, as the home inspector, I can grab an area where maybe it's peeling, or maybe there's some in the dirt. Whenever I see peeling paint in the dirt, I think of my daughter again, as she was eating that dirt and wondering how many children are eating lead-based paint while they're eating dirt. Of course, the lead-based paint isn't good for her, but I'm sure that dirt wasn't good for her either. And who knows what health effects there may have been associated with that. On the interior, you're really only going to have access to lead if the paint is damaged. And like I say, you know, there may be 10 coats of paint on in a home that was built in 1922, and if it's in good shape, the home inspector is only going to be able to access the last one, the top one. And you know, one thing a home inspector is not supposed to do, especially without permission, is to change the home in any way and to actually get a drill out or to start chipping off paint so that he can get in and see if any of those layers are lead. That would be improper. Similarly, if you've got, say, 7 layers and the 3rd layer is lead, the chances of that lead-based paint layer actually getting out into the living space, very thin. So as a result, in my opinion, it would be improper to go digging or drilling through a wall to see if you can identify lead in any one of the previous layers, assuming, of course, that the paint is in good shape. If it's not, then you can just pull off a piece and check that.